Unfortunately, I was a Pac-12 fan. With the Pac-12 gone now, I had to find a new conference to kind of orbit around. And I just happened to choose the Big 10 because I do love the SEC, but we all know the SEC is the SEC and there's just too much going on over there. But with that out the way, I do love the Big 10. And for some reason, it's still called the Big 10 even though it has about like 18 teams now. But anyway, I decided I'm just going to make a video and rank every single stadium in the Big 10, even though there's 18 teams. Some of the criteria for this video is just looks, stadium feel. I'm also going to be including some of the moments that I remember watching at these stadiums. So if I remember like a big moment happening at one of these stadiums, I'll include it in the video. But yeah, it's pretty simple. This video did take me a while to make as well, so make sure to like, subscribe, and all that. And if you want me to cover anything specifically in college football or college football related, just comment down below. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Okay, so the worst stadium in the Big 10 goes to the Northwestern Wildcats. Now, if I'm being completely honest, the only reason Northwestern is last is because currently they're without a place to call home till at least 2025, and are currently set to play their home games until then on a temporary on-campus stadium built close to where their soccer and lacrosse team play. In a conference with stadiums such as the Horseshoe and the Big House, 18th place was legit the only place I could rationalize putting Northwestern's temporary stadium. And also, since they haven't played any games at that stadium yet, my choice for their biggest home game is at their old stadium, Ryan Field. It would have to be the time they hosted number 4 Ohio State, and they were ranked number 16th themselves back in 2013, and also College Game Day was at the campus for that game as well.
Now throws, touchdown. Get together next week, if I'm not mistaken. That will be a great game.
So here they come with the hook on the ladder. Scramble for the ball. Touchdown, Ohio State.
Coming in 17th place, we have SECU Stadium, home of the Maryland Terrapins. This is our first official stadium of the video, and I don't really have much to say about it because it's a fairly simple and small design compared to a lot of the other stadiums in the Big 10, as its max capacity is only around 51,000. The horseshoe design with an upper deck is alright, I guess, but I'm not a fan of the open end zone with nothing to look at. If it were up to me, I would close it off and have a lower bowl, but I've rarely seen them sell out games in my lifetime, so I can understand why they would want to keep the capacity at a certain number, as adding more seats wouldn't make any sense. As for the biggest game I've seen in the stadium, Maryland has been cheeks for a while, so it would have to be, I don't know, that time number 10 Ohio State came into town in 2018 and almost got upset by the Terps in OT.
Going for 2 in the win. Pigram rolling out, looking, throws, no, incomplete! Ohio State survives!
Coming in 16th place, we have SHI Stadium, home of the Rugged Scarlet Knights. You would think the college team that was a part of the first ever college football game that took place in 1869 against the Princeton Tigers would have a huge stadium with a lot of rich history, but that's just not the case, as the stadium only holds around 52,000. I will say though, I am a big fan of the little hut they have at the end of one of the end zones, and I think the touch of red on the outline of the stadium is super clean, and I'll give them credit for at least finishing the entire lower bowl instead of doing a horseshoe. Other than that, this is a pretty below average stadium for the Big 10 standard. And for the biggest game I remember seeing Rugged host, we have to go back to 2006, when, get this, the 15th ranked 8-0 Rugged Scarlet Knights would host and beat the 8-0 third ranked Louisville Cardinals in a banger of a game. Man, college football was crazy in the mid 2000s. And also, this is a random fact you could use like whenever, when you're at the bar or whatever, but Ray Rice actually went to Rugged, which is crazy. I didn't know that. Now you know it.
All the way from Redlands, California. Turn the fans around, and now they're coming at it from both.
Now, coming in 15th place, I know this is going to be controversial. I have Spartan Stadium, home of the Michigan State Spartans. Check me out. I know this is kind of a high spot for a stadium with the capacity of 75,000 plus, and a stadium that has hosted plenty of huge games. When it comes to this stadium, it's just boring to me. It reminds me of Rugged Stadium with just another deck and more seats. Other than that, nothing really stands out to me. And you would think Spartan Stadium would go a little more crazy on the exterior, but that's just not the case. It's not a bad stadium by any means, just leaves a lot to be desired for me. But like I've said, I've seen plenty of huge games here, and my favorite one would have to be in 2015 when number 7 Oregon would travel to Spartan Stadium to face the number 5 ranked Spartans.
4th and 16. Adams stepping up. Adams firing. Short hops and incomplete. Spartans take over.
Coming in 14th place, we have Memorial Stadium, home of the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm not going to lie, I personally just really like the design of the stadium. It's a bit on the smaller end as it only holds around 52,000, but it makes up for it with a massive horseshoe design with walls of seats on both sides, and the new renovation filling in the open end zone looks really good as it fills the stadium out well. I'm also a huge fan of the exterior. It kind of looks like a castle. As for the best game I've ever seen here, we're going to have to skip this entry, only because it's easily the year they upset number 8 Penn State, but that was in 2020 and nobody was there to watch it in person because of, you guys know, so yeah. Coming in 13th place, we have one of the newer stadiums in the Big Ten that was built less than 20 years ago, Huntington Bank Stadium, home of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. This stadium is a fairly simple and small design, but I feel the simple 2-deck approach works really well here for the stadium, as the capacity is like around 50,000, but I feel like that is the perfect number for where the Minnesota football team is at. I also really like how at the 50-yard line the seats are colored Minnesota signature maroon. Overall, it's a decent stadium for the Golden Gophers standard. As for the biggest game I can remember the Golden Gophers hosting, we have to go back to 2019 when the number 4 ranked Nifty Lions came into town. I remember watching this game like it was yesterday. I believe the current safety for the Bucks, Antonio Winfield Jr., had like 2 picks that game for Minnesota, as they would secure the dub in a game for the ages.
Get down the field. They had a 58-yard rush against Buffalo earlier this year, throwing deep, single coverage, jump ball, and it is intercepted by Antoine Winfield.
3-man rush. Clifford again has time, throws, and it is intercepted.
Coming in 12th place, we have one that might shock a lot of people. I can't lie, when it comes to this team and stadium, I'm a little biased. But let me stop stalling. Coming in at number 12, we have Ross-Ade Stadium, home of the Purdue Boilermakers. Okay, did you get your mean comments out of the way? Now let me explain why I like this stadium more than the other ones listed so far. Well, while the stadium isn't the biggest size-wise, as it only holds around 57,000 on a good day, to be honest, the stadium just looks really sick at night. There's nothing else I can say. I think the year was like 2019 and I was watching a Purdue game as they hosted the number 2 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. And this game to the Purdue players had a lot of meaning because they were playing for the late Tyler Kent, a diehard Boilermaker who would pass away from cancer. And just as he left an impact on the players, that game left an impact on me, and that's part of the reason I Purdue Stadium this far down the list. As for the biggest game Purdue hosted, it's obviously the one I just mentioned.
They work the play clock all the way down. It's Moore in motion. They get it to him. Moore in space. A burst of speed. A first down for Purdue. He's still going. Moore cuts back. Touchdown.
Okay, so this next entry comes somewhat with an asterisk, because for 11th place and 10th place, the two stadiums could honestly be interchangeable, if you ask me. What stadiums am I referring to? Well, that would have to be the Los Angeles Coliseum, home of the USC Trojans, and the Rose Bowl, home of the UCLA Bruins, 2 of the 4 newcomers to the Big Ten this year. When it comes to size, both these stadiums check off that box, as USC holds around 79,000 and UCLA Stadium holds around 90,000. But when it comes to atmosphere and everything else I look for in a college venue, these 2 legendary stadiums couldn't hold a candle to some of the other stadiums I'll be naming shortly. I think the one thing that carries both of these stadiums is just a lot of history has taken place within it. But if you think about it, most of the moments have nothing to do with the actual football teams. And I think my biggest pet peeve with these 2 stadiums are the fact that most of the time it's empty or tarped off. This is college football. If I wanted to see tarps, I'd watch the Oakland Athletics or the Washington Commanders. If you think my ranking for these stadiums are a little low, that's fine. Let me know why you would put it higher if you would. And for the biggest game, I'm gonna skip these 2 because I can't remember the last Ruckus home game either of these 2 teams had, to be honest. Coming in at number 9, we have our second Memorial Stadium of the video, and not our last one either. Home of the Illinois Fighting Illini. What can I say about this stadium other than the fact that it's absolutely beautiful? While it is on the smaller side of the Big Ten as it only holds around 63,000, it more than makes up for it with its amazing exterior. If I'm being honest, if I was driving by this stadium and didn't know who played there, I would probably think it was a courthouse or a state capitol building. It's just that nice. If you really think about it, this stadium is pretty much a smaller version of the Horseshoe at Ohio State. It sucks the Fighting Illini have never became a dominant football program, because if they did, their stadium would have been built up way more than it is. And if I'm being honest, that would have made this venue no doubt top 5 in the Big Ten to me. For the biggest home game I remember, we have to go back to 2007. Yeah, they haven't been good for a while, but in this game they would host and upset the number 5 Wisconsin Badgers. And oh yeah, this is random, but also this year they would go to the, at the time, number 1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes and upset them as well.
But wanted to stay at Illinois. He will get a job very soon. Excellent coach and recruiter. Mendenhall breaks free inside the 10. Mendenhall dives, and it's an Illinois touchdown. That had won 14 consecutive games, but that streak comes to an end in Champaign as Illinois knocks off Wisconsin 31-26.
And at number 8, we have Kinnick Stadium, home of the Iowa Hawkeyes. We all know about the University of Iowa Children's Hospital that has a top floor lounge that allows the patients to view the game from the hospital. I think that is one of the coolest features I've ever seen any stadium have. I also really love how close the stadium seats are to the field. I can see why opposing teams have trouble leaving with a W. If I'm being honest, I could glaze this venue for hours, but I'll end with this. You know your stadium is lit when it's called the place where top 5 teams go to die. I'll leave with that. The craziest home game I've seen here, we don't have to go back too far, because in 2021, number 3 Iowa hosted number 4 Penn State for one of the biggest games in Iowa Hawkeye history.
He'll start from his own 2. Clifford sprinting out of the pocket, wants to square his shoulders, almost knocked down, and he throws a pick. Justin Jacobs, and Iowa's in business. Here comes a blitz. Roberson steps into his throw, intercepted again.
Coming in at number 7, we have yet again another Memorial Stadium, home of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This stadium right here is absolutely massive, as it holds around 90,000, which makes this next stat of the Cornhuskers selling out this stadium in 396 consecutive games even more amazing. If you were in Lincoln, Nebraska, you'd think a professional sports team played here if you drove by and didn't know anything about sports. I also really like how modern it looks for a college stadium, and I'm honestly super shocked Nebraska hasn't been back to that powerhouse status yet, because looking at this stadium, you would think they were a true blue blood. As for the best game I've seen played here, we have to go back to 2010, when the Cornhuskers would give the number 6 ranked Mizzou Tigers the beats.
Gets it on, has 5, has 10, and he's off to the races. In fact, he's going to score on the opening play from scrimmage, 66 yards. Time, Lee will take a knee, and that is it. Clock runs down, 17 and 16. Here.
Coming in at number 6, we have Husky Stadium, home of the Washington Huskies. Man, this stadium is something special. If I'm being honest, if Washington was in the ACC or the Big 12, their stadium would easily be top 3 if you ask me. But in the Big 10, there is just so much competition. But let's not think about the negatives and outline what makes this stadium so great. So while this stadium only holds around 70K, it more than makes up with it with how loud the stadium is said to get, as every year Washington Stadium ranks in the top 5 for one of the loudest venues in college football. Something else I'm sure you guys would kill me in the comments if I failed to mention is that this stadium also has one of the prettiest views in all of college football, as it sits right next to Lake Washington. For the best game I've seen here, we have to go to just last year when the Huskies hosted the number 8 Oregon Ducks in Bo Nix and outdueled them in one of the best games of that year.
Launching for the end zone, forget being patient. Odunze, and Washington takes the lead. Missed it, and the Huskies survive.
Coming in at number 5, I have one that might be a shocker, but taking our 5th spot is Beaver Stadium, home of the Penn State Nittany Lions. And before I get into the stadium, here's a fun fact. As a kid, I always thought it was Nifty Lions, but it's actually Nittany. And supposedly they get that part of their name from the Mount Nittany, which overlooks the university. As for the stadium, we all know it is one of the cathedrals of college football. It is huge, and the biggest venue on this list so far, as its max capacity sits around 107,000, which opposing players hear every one of those hundreds of thousands of fans during whiteout games, as it is undoubtedly one of the best things you can experience when watching college football. While this stadium is overall amazing, there is one thing that keeps it from being higher on this list, and that is the exterior. It's just kind of bland. Other than that, everything else about this venue is perfect. For the best game I've seen here, we have to go back to 2016 when the number 2 ranked Buckeyes came into Happy Valley and got shocked by the 2-loss Penn State Nifty Lions, in a game that many would consider the game that brought Penn State back to the forefront of college football.
Tyler Durbin is super reliable inside of 40. This is from 45, and it's blocked. Lions scoop it up. Brett Haley will score!
Okay, taking our number 4 spot, we have Camp Randall Stadium, home of the Wisconsin Badgers. Dude, this stadium is just sick. I really love how one side has a double deck and the other is just a wall of box suites. And while the stadium only holds around 80,000, the way the stadium is built, it looks and feels like there are way more people at the game than that. But I think by far my favorite thing about this stadium has to be the awesome athletic complex building that seamlessly fits right into the stadium. This might sound odd, but this stadium looks like a giant frat house to me. And when they play jump around during a Wisconsin home game, that comparison I made does not seem that far off. As for the best game I've seen here, we have to go back to 2016 when Wisconsin would take the number 7th ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers into overtime and win.
Incomplete! Stanley Morgan!
And at number 3, we have Ohio Stadium, or the Horseshoe, home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. If I'm being honest, I'm going to keep this section short and my glazing of this football cathedral to a minimum. But first things first, this stadium is absolutely massive, as it holds around 102,000 people. And when it comes to Ohio football, most games are filled to max capacity anyway. The thing I like the most about this stadium and what puts it this high up for me is its amazing exterior. It literally looks like the Roman Coliseum with the football field in the middle. As for the biggest game I've seen here, well, to be honest, when your program is like Ohio State, you have big home games every year. So we don't have to go back too far, as in 2023, number 7 Penn State came to the shoe and got outdueled by the Buckeyes in a defensive slugfest.
And they'll give it to him. Williams trying to get in and dives at the end. Touchdown Buckeyes. Mayan Williams.
Coming in at number 2, we have Michigan Stadium, or the Big House, home of the Michigan Wolverines. Man, this stadium has grown on me over the years. When I was younger, I wasn't really a fan of how simple the design was and thought it was boring. But as I got older, the simple choice of just a massive bowl with an endless wall of seats filled with over 107,000 fans wearing Michigan blue and yellow. Must I say more? As a fan watching teams coming to play here, I felt intimidation for them. So I could only imagine playing there as an opposing team, where no matter which direction you look, all you see is blue and yellow. What else can I say? There isn't quite anything like it. And with how old and outdated a design the stadium has, I don't think we'll ever see anything like this again. As for the craziest game I've seen here, it is easily when Michigan finally ended their losing streak to Ohio State in 2021.
They're doing here. First down and goal at the 4. Touchdown Wolverines!
Okay, for our number 1 spot in the Big Ten, we have a team that just joined this year, and I know some might find this choice a bit edgy, or whatever you want to call it, but this is just my personal preference, and I just think the stadium is so unique. Anyway, coming in at number 1 is Autzen Stadium, home of the Oregon Ducks. Now, I'm just going to come out and say it. This stadium is on the smaller end when it comes to college stadiums in general, as it holds only around 54,000. But like they say, size doesn't matter, because this stadium has such an intimate feel to it. Its nickname is the Zoo, and it feels like it when watching games on TV. I love it, it's just so cool. I think my favorite part of the venue is how the bowl is all uneven, like one side is bigger than the other. It's just so different. You don't see things like that often in college football. As for the best game I've seen here, we have to go back to 2014 when the Ducks hosted Michigan State in a matchup that had massive college football playoff implications.
And have kept their drive alive.
2nd down and 8. Mariota pump fakes. He's got a wide open receiver.